Engaging hooks, how to start your personal narrative and keep the reader reading. Why are hooks so important to a personal narrative? Well, that's where they begin. It's sort of like meeting a person for the first time. What they say and what they do is your first impression. Our goal with the hook is to keep the reader engaged. Just like you watch a trailer for a new movie, your introduction is the preview to what the reader can expect throughout the essay. It really needs to do two things. First, it should preview the content of the essay or personal narrative. It doesn't have to give away all of the essay's secrets, but we should know what we're expecting as a reader. Second, it should establish your voice. What language will you be using throughout the essay? What types of information will you be providing and in what fashion? If you satisfy these two things, and if you get your reader hooked, they'll keep going. One way to start your essay or personal narrative is with an interesting fact. What does this do for the reader? It establishes that they will learn more interesting facts if they keep reading. Who doesn't want to read something where you learn? I used an example below. Archaeologists believe, based on marks they've seen on mummies, that human beings had tattoos between 4000 and 2000 BC in Egypt. Anyone interested in learning more about those facts would keep going. You can also present your thesis statement or purpose right up front. I know typically we do that at the end of the first paragraph, but in this case, you get to play around a little with order. What does this do for the reader? It clearly provides the point of the essay or narrative right from the start, so you know what you're in for and where you're headed. This one below, few stereotypes in the West are as complicated or deeply ingrained as that of the brutal masculinity of the cowboy. We know exactly what this essay is going to provide, and as a reader, we can make an intelligent decision about whether we want to continue. Selecting an appropriate quotation is another way to engage the reader. What does it do for them? It establishes that you know the appropriate sources to support what you are saying. It can also connect with someone who appreciates the author of the quote. For example, if you started by quoting Kendrick Lamar and said, "If I'm going to tell a real story, I'm going to start with my name," anyone who appreciates his music or connects with him will be engaged in the essay. It also is a really nice and clear way of hopping into your story. You can also tell a little bit about yourself at the very beginning. What does it do for the reader? It connects the author and reader because you're sharing something personal, and that's how you build relationships. For example, if you started this way, "When I was 7 years old, my family decided we didn't need to live in a house anymore. We moved into an RV and traveled the country, picking up and finding a new town every few months." By starting this way, you would automatically invite the reader into your life. This is a good way to connect and keep the reader going. They'd want to see what happens next. Presenting a startling fact or figure can also engage the reader. It can shock the reader or challenge something that they didn't know or a belief they already had. For example, think about this quote. According to 2008 figures from the Pew Research Center, 97% of today's K-12 students spend many hours each week playing video games. For people who are against students spending too much time on video games, that would be a scary figure. For students who support video games, that could be something interesting that they'd want to keep reading about. Finally, you can ask your reader a rhetorical question. It's not necessarily one that you answer, but we naturally want to respond to questions when we hear them or when we read them. So essentially, by asking your reader a question, they will begin to have a conversation with the essay or your personal narrative. For example, if you asked at the beginning of an essay, "How much would you pay to save the life of your beloved ones?" the reader's automatically going to start thinking about that issue, and that could blend nicely into your essay. Hopefully, all of these different ways of opening your essay have inspired you a little bit, and when we get to the end of this unit and you write your own, you'll be able to come back and decide which one is suitable. You'll notice that I kept asking, what does this do for the reader? Ultimately, when you write, you have to keep the reader in mind, and having an engaging hook is the first step to writing a great personal narrative for your readers.